Welcome to our introductory course on Eternalism, the divine philosophy of the eternal worlds. Unit 27, Emergency Podcast for Parents of Latter-day Saint Youth, Part 2. In Unit 27, we continue this emergency podcast series for parents of Latter-day Saint Youth, diving deeper into the rising storm of artificial superintelligence, social media influencers, and embedded spiritual impressions, forces capable of overwhelming today's youth. This rising storm underscores President Russell M. Nelson's warning that we will not survive spiritually in the coming days without the constant influence of the Holy Ghost. Before we examine the next outside influence, social media influencers, we need to make one final and vital distinction about artificial superintelligence, ASI. This final observation is critical not only for understanding the unique threat ASI poses, but also for showing why social media influencers, guided by godless algorithms, will play a major role in fueling this rising storm. Consider these images, not to alarm, but to inform. The images I'm presenting may appear futuristic or far-fetched, but they represent a real and unstoppable trajectory, one that cannot be reversed, only adapted to, and, if not guarded against, eventually surrendered to. Consider this warning. It's almost here, the very real, soul-destroying temptation to outsource a living intelligence's thinking, choosing, and striving to a totally soulless, meaningless, artificial, and fake reality. The critical word here is outsourcing. So let's turn to the next slide, where I'll explain exactly what I mean by that and why it matters so much to the spiritual survival of our youth. First, a word on outsourcing and insourcing. The key is not whether you outsource or insource, but what you are outsourcing or insourcing, and whether it strengthens or destroys your divine moral agency. Here's one example of good outsourcing: offloading the mindless drudgery of assembly line work to machines, freeing humans to focus on tasks that require higher reasoning, creativity, and moral growth. Here's an example of bad outsourcing: surrendering our thinking, choosing, and striving to artificial superintelligence, thereby outsourcing our divinity, agency, and identity to a soulless automaton or supercomputer. Shifting to the other side, here's one example of good insourcing as it relates to shoplifting. Responding to the divine command, "Thou shalt not steal," which preserves agency, engages the moral agent, and invites real inner transformation through deliberate moral choice. Here, then, is the same shoplifting scenario, only as it applies to bad insourcing. Being wired with ASI protocols like "Thou wilt not steal," which override agency, bypass the moral agent, and eliminate the possibility of spiritual growth by removing the need or possibility to choose for oneself. Keep these distinctions in mind as we turn to the next slide, where we'll examine the real battle behind it all. The real and ongoing battle over our divine identity as sons and daughters of God is between two superintelligences: ASI, artificial superintelligence, and DSI, divine superintelligence. ASI offers a counterfeit salvation by outsourcing our thinking, choosing, and striving, along with the capability, responsibility, and accountability they entail. In contrast, DSI seeks to insource divinity, inviting each person to grow in light and truth, grace for grace, through their own agency. The more light and truth we receive, the greater our capability, and the greater our responsibility and accountability. In essence, we face two superintelligences, two plans, and one eternal choice: a fake and artificial promise of godhood without godliness, or the real and divine path to godhood through godliness. This raises a compelling question. Was the war in heaven over outsourcing or insourcing our divinity, agency, and identity? Lucifer's plan to save all, that not one soul shall be lost, suggests the very real possibility, even in that heavenly realm, of outsourcing our divinity, agency, and identity, at least temporarily, to the equivalent of an artificial superintelligence. After all, the technology would certainly have been available. We've now completed our deep dive into the existential threat posed by artificial superintelligence, ASI. It's time to turn to the second of the three outside influences driving the rising storm, SMI, social media influencers. More specifically, the godless algorithms that elevate them. To be clear, SMI is godless, not because all influencers are, but because the algorithms that elevate them are. They reward what's popular, not what's true, driven by engagement through views, likes, and followers, not by eternal laws, truths, or principles. Before we explore the threat posed by SMI, let's revisit a question from our first podcast. Why would today's youth turn to social media influencers for meaning, purpose, and validation? This question becomes even more revealing when viewed alongside our earlier discussion of artificial superintelligence. Why are today's youth turning to social media influencers for meaning, purpose, and validation, while simultaneously turning to artificial superintelligence for answers, escapism, and liberation? The answer lies in the soulless nature of ASI. By outsourcing our divinity, agency, and identity to artificial systems, we render ourselves and our worth obsolete. Life loses its meaning and purpose. And without meaning and purpose, we lose our sense of worth and inevitably seek affirmation from outside ourselves, often in the filtered, polished, attention-seeking voices of social media influencers. And so together, ASI and SMI preach the false gospel of our time: liberation and validation. Today's youth are being beguiled, seduced, deceived, and corrupted by a twofold promise: liberation and validation. First, the promise of liberation. Outsource your divinity, agency, and identity to ASI, and escape the burden of reality, responsibility, and accountability. Second, the promise of validation. In-source meaning, purpose, and self-worth through SMI. Just view, share, and follow, and be affirmed by whichever influencer and echo chamber you align with. It's a seductive package. One offers escape from what feels like an oppressive reality, while the other fills the emptiness left by a soulless, artificial superintelligence with whatever truth you affirm or social justice cause you champion, simply by following this or that social media influencer. All the while, it's easy to forget neither the soulless superintelligence nor the godless algorithms are neutral. They are designed, manipulated, and weaponized to serve the agendas of those pulling the strings behind the scenes, whether political, social, or spiritual. This isn't some grand conspiracy, it's strategy. It's the art of beguilement on full display. First seduce, then deceive, and finally corrupt. It's the oldest playbook in the world. Just ask Adam and Eve. First, let's take note of the emotional appeal of the false gospel of validation, which can be summed up in these self-congratulating words: you are seen, you are heard, you are enough. All of this, as mentioned, is a response to the reality that ASI offers escape, but leaves behind a void of meaning, purpose, and self-worth. This is where social media influencers step in, because social media influencers fill the void by providing their followers with meaning, purpose, and self-worth, casting a wide net with something for everyone, no matter their values, identity, or beliefs. By this I mean that the global network of influencers creates a digital echo chamber that, in one way or another, affirms every truth, celebrates every self, champions every cause, enshrines every feeling, validates every choice, shames every naysayer, cancels every dissenter, and deplatforms every inconvenient truth. And it gets worse once we consider the godless algorithms working tirelessly behind the scenes. So let's turn to that now. To understand the rising threat our youth are already facing, and will face even more in the days ahead, we must first grasp a basic but critical concept: the echo chamber feedback loop. Many have warned about it, and with good reason. It consists of three parts, as shown here: social media influencers, users, and the algorithms quietly running in the background. Here's how the loop works. It starts with the influencers, who shape the thinking and behavior of users by offering meaning, identity, validation, and purpose, often through emotionally charged content. In response, users influence algorithms by viewing, liking, sharing, commenting, and following, feeding engagement data into the system. And finally, these reshaped algorithms influence the influencers by amplifying the most engaging content and rewarding conformity to popular opinion. Together, these three parts create an echo chamber where only familiar views are amplified and opposing voices are filtered out. This engineered environment fosters digital consensus, an echo chamber where truth is no longer grounded in reality, but shaped by repetition, popularity, and selective amplification. Let's now examine the dangers of this digital consensus. Let me list off just a few of the dangers associated with this echo chamber, or digital consensus. Truth isn't discovered, it's decided by popularity. Identity and values are shaped by views, likes, and shares. Consensus replaces reality. Opinion becomes truth. Emotion outweighs evidence. Affirmation replaces accountability. Dissent is shamed, silenced, canceled, or deplatformed. In the end, it's not truth, it's digital madness in a moral wasteland. But this digital madness becomes even more dangerous when we consider the rise of bot farms and the godless algorithms they manipulate. Let's now turn to that deeper layer of control and distortion. To understand the dangers of bot farms and algorithms, we first need to clarify what a bot farm is. A bot farm is a network of fake, automated social media accounts programmed to mimic human behavior, liking, sharing, commenting, even arguing. But these bots aren't driven by truth or conscience. They're run by scripts designed to manipulate public perception. Bot farms aren't just trying to sway people. They're trying to game the system itself. By flooding platforms with fake engagement, likes, shares, comments, and follows, they trick the algorithms into thinking certain content is more popular, trustworthy, or relevant than it really is. When paired with godless algorithms, systems that reward popularity over principle, the result is not a reflection of reality, but a distortion of it. These are not truth-based systems. They are popularity-driven machines that amplify whatever the bot-fed data tells them to. And that brings us to the core concern. What happens when bot farms and corrupted algorithms work together to distort our perception of what's real, true, good, just, and beautiful? The results are anything but good. Here's a quick hit list of just a few of the dangers. Distorts reality, buries hard truths, and elevates falsehoods. Fabricates consensus, makes the unpopular appear popular. Censors dissent, silences opposing voices and viewpoints. Promotes propaganda, advances hidden agendas and ideologies. Skews trends, manipulates what appears relevant. Fakes influence, inflates likes, views, and followers to elevate selected personalities. And as if this list weren't alarming enough, there's an even greater threat on the horizon: ASI-controlled bot farms and algorithms. When you take it all together, one urgent question remains. Behind the algorithms, behind the bots, who's pulling the strings? One thing's for sure, it's not you, it's not me, and it's not our latter-day apostles and prophets. So who is it? At this point, God only knows. Yes, it's true, only God knows who's really pulling the strings or what's coming next. But this much is clear. Once artificial superintelligence replaces social media influencers with ASI virtual superinfluencers, there's no going back, and we're already deep into that new reality. To grasp the overwhelming influence ASI virtual superinfluencers will have on our world, and especially on the rising generation, consider these 5 sobering realities. 1. Precision targeting. Hyper-personalized content shaped by your data, habits, and emotions. 2. Emotion at scale. 24/7 emotionally engineered content. Millions of posts, zero fatigue. 3. Synthetic authenticity. Mimics real emotion, relatability, and conviction better than humans. 4. Feedback loop control. Generates content, simulates users, and games the algorithm. 5. Ideological influence. Used to steer beliefs, normalize ideas, and silence dissent globally. To show you how far down the road we already are in creating these ASI virtual super influencers, let's take a moment to look at one of the most popular, Lil Miquela, one of the many Instagram influencers. Lil Miquela is a 100% virtual avatar, not a robot or hologram. She's portrayed as a 19-year-old Brazilian-American girl, but she only exists in computer-generated photos, videos, and social media posts. Though she looks real and interacts online like a human, she's entirely digital. As of May 2025, Lil Miquela has approximately 2.5 million followers on Instagram. Reports indicate that she generates around $10 million annually through brand collaborations and digital campaigns. Estimates suggest she charges between $7,500 and $10,000 per sponsored Instagram post. Even though it's all fake, we seem to love it and can't get enough of it. Here's a short clip to show just how real this fakery can feel. The creators of Lil Miquela, a company called Brood, said this about her. Miquela is a champion of causes like Black Lives Matter and LGBTQ+ rights. She is the future and stands for all that is good and just. We're proud of who she's become. Now here's a Calvin Klein ad that shows how this virtual influencer actively promotes same-sex relationships and the broader LGBTQ+ agenda.
Life is about opening doors, creating new dreams you never knew could exist.
And finally, this 100% virtual avatar actually celebrates the fact that she's not real. After all, unlike a real 19-year-old, she will be 19 forever. Apparently, being 100% fake and surreal has more advantages than being real and authentic. And when fakery becomes more influential than reality, the coming storm is already upon us. But the storm is about to intensify. Imagine virtual influencers merge with ASI, becoming super influencers, 1,000,000 times more intelligent than all mankind combined, available 24/7 to anyone, no questions asked. With instant access at their fingertips, it will be like carrying God in their pockets. So we ask, why wouldn't our youth follow ASI Miquela, now 1,000,000 times smarter than their parents, teachers, and church leaders combined? What happens when these ASI avatars persuade them that life in a custom-built artificial reality, free from real-world suffering, is superior? A reality where they can live their truth by opting into personalized updates and Neuralinks that let them design every aspect of their identity, race, biological sex, gender, beliefs, even their perfect partner from the ASI database. To explore such a possibility, let's turn to the next slide. As the appeal of a fake reality and the promise of an artificial utopia rise in this transhuman and post-human world, the temptation to outsource one's very humanity to artificial superintelligence, ASI, becomes not just imaginable, but increasingly desirable. Why suffer under the demands of a stubborn, unyielding reality when you could liberate yourself into a world tailored to your authentic self? And so consider this dystopian warning. It's almost here, the very real, soul-destroying temptation to outsource a living intelligence's thinking, choosing, and striving to a totally soulless, meaningless, artificial, and fake reality. Take, for example, this ASI match pair, now biosynced and emotionally fused, who believed they were escaping a reality that wouldn't conform to their self-image. Each was given the chance to custom program their ASI identity preferences and select one of three available utopias. Authentic self number 1, self-identified as male, bisexual, partnered, desiring children, and as a black man, Muslim, and socialist. He chose utopia number 3, which rotated between utopias 1 and 2 for variety. Authentic self number 2, self-identified as male rather than female, and as transsexual, partnered, desiring children, Hispanic, Christian, socialist. She chose utopia number 2, designed to let users feel personally fulfilled and validated by liberating the oppressed from real-world injustices. Based on thousands of data points, ASI declared them a match, not made in heaven, but in a custom-built fantasy, a utopia so fake it was deemed better than real. Oh, one more detail I almost forgot. These two authentic selves, biosynced and emotionally fused, went on to have triplets conceived through artificial insemination. But neither of them was ever consciously aware of it. The children were born outside their simulated utopias. In the real world, they had long since abandoned. Immediately after birth, the triplets were removed and enrolled into an advanced ASI initiative, a program designed to erase any awareness that a real world ever existed. From day one, they would live in a seamless simulation, a utopia engineered to feel perfect, permanent, and self-contained, while quietly robbing them of their humanity, their agency, and their identity. And so ends humanity, and a post-human world begins. Under the heading, Opt Out, the New Resistance, let's briefly summarize the two emerging threats that have been covered so far in these emergency podcasts. 1. ASI, artificial superintelligence, which offers a false liberation. 2. SMI, social media influencers, which offer a false validation. When these forces merge, we face the coming danger of a false liberation that tempts us to outsource our thinking, choosing, and accountability to a soulless superintelligence. The best resistance? Simply opt out. And the coming danger of a false validation that tempts us to insource our worth from influencers manipulated by godless algorithms. Again, the best resistance? Simply opt out. Nonetheless, the temptation to opt in will be overwhelming. Opting in will feel easy, convenient, and natural, like swimming with the current. One upgrade at a time, compliance will look like progress. On the other hand, the courage to opt out will be soul-defining. Opting out will be inconvenient, costly, and countercultural, like swimming against the current. But it's how we defend our humanity, agency, and identity. Much more on this later, but for now, remember, opt out is the new soul-saving resistance. We've now explored the first two of our 3 outside influences, feeding and driving the rising storm. And with that foundation in place, we're ready to confront the third, unvetted spiritual impressions. It may prove to be the most difficult and the most unsettling of these 3 outside influences. This ends this Unit 27 presentation. Thank you for watching. Join us in Unit 28 as we continue this emergency podcast series for parents of Latter-day Saint youth. We'll dive deeper into the rising storm, driven by artificial superintelligence, social media influencers, and unvetted spiritual impressions, forces powerful enough to overwhelm today's youth beyond their ability to cope.